I'm Insomniac, and today we're looking at a dive watch from Casio.
Who are you?
Insomniac. Well, before we get started, I'd like to give a big shout out to Pat Ford for sending this in. If you have any watches you'd like to see reviewed on the channel, email me at shouldItimethis@gmail.com. I will let you know where to send the watch or watches. They will be reviewed, insured, and sent back. Alright, let's get into the watch. The case on this watch can be summed up in one phrase: the most generic stainless steel dive watch case imaginable. And don't take that as a negative, I'm just saying that there's nothing really special here. It's a solid, basic stainless steel case with the shape you think of when you think generic dive watch. The quality of the brushed and polished finishing is what you'd expect from a watch in this price range. From a distance it looks great, up close it's not terrible, but it's not fantastic either. This case does have a few proper dive watch bonuses here though. You have a screw down crown, a crown guard, and you have a screw down case back. That's not to say that probably anybody is going to be using this on a dive. Just saying, it has a few features. The case back has some engraving around the outer edge and under the large engraved swordfish, giving you various information about the watch. Otherwise, not much to talk about back here. Last we have the bezel. I think the steel bezel on this watch looks fairly cheap, but they did do a good job here of matching the insert color to the dial. You have a lume marker in the bezel up at 12. Grip when turning the bezel is decent. Action is okay, but you do have quite a bit of play in between positions. Overall, the case is pretty good. For the price though, which we'll get to later, it's very good. The dial on this watch is pretty nice actually. It's a sunburst blue base, which although subtle on this watch, it does give you a couple hues of blue depending on how the light hits it. You have raised applied hour markers with polished borders and lume fillings and a simple white printed minute track out on the blue chapter ring. Under the 12 o'clock index, you have a printed Casio logo, and down above the 6 o'clock index, you have that swordfish logo and WR200M signifying 200 meters of water resistance. There's a simple date window at 3 o'clock, black numeral on a white disc with a thin white border around the opening. The hands are polished minus the lume fillings, and I do like the different hand shapes used to easily differentiate the three hands from each other. My only real gripe with these hands is the length. They're not exactly long enough for this dial, so aesthetically they look great with the rest of the dial, but proportionately they look like Casio has one set of hands that they're slapping in every watch, no matter the size. Overall though, it's a clean, simple, and fairly good looking dial. The only usable complication on this watch is the date at 3 o'clock. It's large enough, and the black numeral on a white disc gives it good contrast, so it works, and it's easy to read. Nice and simple. The lume on this watch is a mixed bag of great and not so good. A couple of the great things about this lume are: number one, there's a large amount of lume filling inside all of the hour markers and hands and on the bezel marker. It also picks up a charge fairly easily. I noticed that it even picked up a decent charge from the lights right above my desk earlier this evening before I walked outside. The not so good are: number one, the brightness of the lume. Even if you purposely charge it like I did here, the lume isn't impressively bright, and two, the lume charge doesn't last very long. Time at a glance on this watch isn't flawless, but it's very good. The contrast of the white lume fillings, white minute indices, and polished hands against all that dark blue is excellent, and all three of the hands have nice sharp points to them. The only small things keeping this section from a perfect score are: number one, the hands, as I mentioned earlier, although definitely long enough for a quick read at the time, could have been longer and therefore closer to their respective tracks. And number two, the minute track is printed on such a steep angle that you lose a small section of that track depending on the angle that you're viewing the watch from. Overall though, it's very easy to read the time on this watch at a quick glance. This piece has a Japanese quartz movement in it. Love it or hate it, it simply works and has been perfectly accurate in the time that I've had it here. And for those of you who watch my reviews, you're probably going to be surprised to hear this: the second hand has crisp, decisive stops rather than lazy or springy pauses, and the tip of the second hand actually lines up with, or at least gets very close to, each index it's supposed to stop at. And if you don't think that's impressive, just go back and watch most of my other quartz watch reviews. This is one of the cheapest watches I've reviewed on this channel so far, yet it has one of the best looking quartz movements out of anything I've reviewed. The strap that comes with this watch is functionally excellent and aesthetically terrible. Let's start with the good. According to Casio, it's black resin. Basically, it's just your typical rubber style dive strap, but I found it to be quite comfortable, and the free loop holds the excess strap in place with no problem at all throughout the day. I don't have to fiddle with it. And obviously, because it's rubber or resin or whatever, you can swim with it without damaging the strap. Aesthetically, it's a dull looking black rubber strap with a plain stainless buckle. And quite frankly, it looks like a $7 generic dive strap that you'd grab off of Amazon. In fact, when I first got the watch, I had to hop on the Casio site to see if this is really the strap they sold with this watch or if Pat had changed it out before he sent it in. So does it work? Yes. Does it look good? No. Last but not least, we have value, and here's where this watch really shines. On the Casio site, this watch sells for $75. But as of the time of this review, I saw it on another website brand new for $60. For that price, you could replace the strap with something really nice and still be under $100. And although there's nothing impressive about it, it's a normal looking dive style watch with fairly good aesthetics, a super accurate movement, and although like I said earlier, I don't think anybody's going to actually be using this for actual dives, based on the claimed water resistance and all of the features that I outlined earlier, this actually is a cheap dive style watch that you could take in the pool or swim around in the ocean with it, and I don't think you'll actually do any damage to the watch. So honestly, for $60, I think it's actually a great value. Well, another big thank you to Pat for sending this in. Always appreciate it. As you saw, the last review I did was on a Tag Heuer. This one's on a Casio. I appreciate all kinds of watches coming in here, anything that's on the market. This way I can give my honest opinion on these pieces and shine a better light on them for anybody who might be thinking about purchasing any of these watches. So very cool. Again, if you have anything that you'd like to see reviewed on the channel, make sure you email me at shouldItimethis@gmail.com, and I'll see you all at the next review.